We're going live now. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Specialty Chemicals World IE 2021. Theme this year is Emerging Stronger in the Post-Pandemic World, Actions for Specialty Chemical Industry. I am delighted to inform Chemtech has received overwhelming response and support from the industry and the government bodies for this event. And last year has been very different for us from meeting people to face-to-face meeting them online due to the current pandemic. This situation inspired Chemtech to launch the digital edition of flagship event to engage the stakeholders of chemical processing industry online. Thanks to the members of our Central Advisory Board from the specialty chemicals industry and all our partner associations for their relentless support to plan for the event. Now I am delighted to invite Mr. Maulik Jasubhai, Chairman and Chief Executive Jasubhai Group and Chemtech Foundation for the welcome address. Over to you, Maulik Bhai.
Good afternoon and welcome to our dear friends of Chemtech. What a year it has been. What a year it has been for all of us, and especially for Chemtech, which is a platform for interaction and handshakes and meetings of minds between people, industry, and all the stakeholders. You know, when the lockdown started in Mumbai last March, we were we were wondering what and how are we going to continue to build our ecosystem of industries and government and thought leaders and students. And we spent almost 4 5 months trying to figure out how we are going to recreate at best what we can do with the current limitations. One of the challenges we faced was we were seeing many exhibitions which were trying to create or recreate or replicate the so-called the hall and the lobby of the things in the virtual world. We decided to take a slightly different tack. We wanted to create an immersive ecosystem where our stakeholders still have a chance to interact with each other on a personalized basis. We wanted to try and create what you might have heard of this word called mass customization. We didn't want to try and create the lobby of the exhibition and the exhibition booth and hoping that people will have similar experiences. So we decided, for us to create an interactive and an immersive ecosystem which will at best can create the interactivity of the Chemtech platform, we decided to go the mass customization route. The platform on which you are participating, it enables you to have your personal dashboard and personal meeting relevance, whether it is you want to explore a technology demonstrated by one of the exhibitors, whether you want to meet with some of the people and your friends from the industry, whether you want to create new contacts. And I have to tell you, it has been an incredible experience. Chemtech IE opened only this morning, and I want to share just one screen with you. Am I allowed to share screen here, Mitra? I want to share one screen with you where, one second. I don't know if everybody can see the screen. I hope you can. This is the live data analytics of all the activities that are going on the Chemtech IE platform. Just since this morning, we've had more than almost 3,000 people who have made contacts with their friends in the industry, with participants, with speakers. They have requested personal request of meetings that they have sent out to people whom they hadn't met for a while. And more than 310 meetings have actually occurred on this platform just since this morning. To me, this is the power of the Chemtech stakeholders and the friends of Chemtech and the entire ecosystem that we are trying to build. whether it is, looking at each aspect of the interactivity. Now, don't get me wrong, nothing can ever replace a handshake, ever replace a smiley face of a friend to sit down with a coffee or make a business deal. Having said that, this is the closest we could get in the current year. And we have to thank each one of our stakeholders, starting with, our Central Advisory Board chairmen, like Dr. Ramachandran, Mr. Adnan Ahmed, Mr. B. Narayan, and several industry leaders who have helped us and supported us tremendously to help create such a platform. I hope each one of you will take full advantage of this opportunity, and we promise you we will be back in person at about exactly 1 year from today at our original venue. And we look forward to welcoming you there again. So I will hand this over to Mitra and take the conference of Specialty Chemicals Chemtech IE 2021 forward.
Thank you, Mr. Jasubhai. Dr. Raman Ramachandran, fondly called as Dr. Raman, is a leader of agriculture industry. Dr. Raman is a PhD from the University of Adelaide and an MSc in agriculture from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. Before joining PI, he was the chairman and managing director of BASF India and head of the BASF legal entities in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. During his stint of nearly 3 decades with Global Chemicals Major, Dr. Ramachandran held many positions of responsibility and led the strategic evolution of the company as a leader in the agricultural products business across the Asia-Pacific region. He was a member of the company's executive committee of the Global Agricultural Products Division and its Global R&D Steering Committee. Dr. Ramachandran was a member of the Asia Pacific Business Board and Vice President, CropLife Asia. Now for the Chairman's address, I'm privileged to invite Dr. Raman. Over to you, Dr. Raman.
Mitra, thank you so much. And Maulik, thank you for that wonderful introduction and setting the stage for this conference. Yes, having been associated with the annual event organized by Jasbhai for the last maybe 5 or 6 years, I'm also struggling with this new format. But I guess over the last about 8 to 9 months, many of us have really learned to live in this virtual world. We have developed our own tools and methodologies. And I was really delighted to see that graph where in the virtual platform, we are able to really facilitate these individual and group interactions to a level that is the best that is possible in an environment such as what we live in today. Yeah? So thank you for taking this initiative and glad to be part of this whole organizing committee. And again, I want to take this opportunity to thank some of the organizing committee members like Adnan, then Rajendra Gaugi, and others who have very, very diligently, worked on putting together a wonderful program. I'm sure those of you who participate will really gain from it because the topics that we are going to talk about are very, very, I would say, topical because, we are emerging out of this pandemic. Hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months, life will remain, kind of come back to a certain level of normalcy. The ones who are going to be really successful are the ones who will really be able to emerge out of this pandemic much stronger, look at what opportunities lie and leverage those opportunities. Yeah? And so this conference is going to be to a great extent discussing, what are the ideas that we have and how do we emerge stronger in this post-pandemic world, because the post-pandemic world is going to be very different from the world that we lived in the past before this pandemic started. The way we work is changing. I don't think we will ever revert back to that, original ways of working. So there are going to be a number of changes that are going to happen. Travels for some time is going to be restricted. So we need to also think about how do we connect with customers, how do we position ourselves. So these are all, supply chain is going to be a huge challenge. And most importantly, what are the policy changes that is happening with governments, whether in the country or across the world, is going to be another very, very critical driver on how we emerge out of this successfully. So in that background, I'm just going to talk about a few drivers and dynamics that I see as very important to consider. Now, this is a conference about specialty chemicals, and let's try and define the specialty chemicals first. The specialty chemicals today constitute about 20% of the global chemical industry. And over the last several years, Asia, and to a great extent driven by China, has been driving the growth of this. And while the chemical industry, more than 50% has shifted to Asia, to a great extent, equal or even a larger proportion of the specialty chemicals market has also shifted to Asia, driven by China. And driven by another very important factor. The factor is that Asia is becoming richer. Per capita GDP of almost every Asian country is increased. Manufacturing in Asia has increased dramatically over the last maybe 10 to 20 years, or maybe even more than that. And all these dynamics have contributed to this shift that has happened with the specialty chemical industries. Besides this, the other very, very important factor when it comes to specialty chemical industry is the value that it has created for shareholders. So as a consequence, in the last about 5 years, there have been a number of transformative acquisitions that have happened across the world, and more than 50% of the M&A transactions of almost $1 billion in value. And the returns from specialty chemical companies have been significantly above the market, not just in India and in many parts of the world. So the Indian market, more specifically, a little bit more fragmented, with very few scale players. It's kind of, in some cases, in some levels, still requires a certain organization. Overall, from a chemicals perspective, India has been a net importer, almost $15 billion of trade deficit coming out of overall chemical, import-export imbalance. However, when you talk specifically about specialty products, then we are actually, we export more in value than we import. So clearly, the market dynamics have already demonstrated that India is best suited for the specialty chemicals, and we have some levers that we can really leverage to be a major player on a global perspective. But if you really introspect to a great extent, what have we leveraged? We have leveraged our abundant manpower. We have leveraged to some extent, technical skills that are available, engineering skills that are available. I believe that we still have not fully leveraged the potential of research and development in the specialty chemical market to cater to the world customers. And I believe that's an area where I think Indian companies will really benefit by focusing on innovation based on research, development, and catering to the global customers. Now, very quickly about some of the trends, and one particular trend, and I'm sure we speak about this more in this particular conference, which is about, the call for sustainability across the world, primarily triggered by the impending climate crisis that we are all starting to recognize in almost every part of the world and almost on a daily basis. Yeah? So the global warming is really pushing for carbon pricing to account for external, negative externalities. Businesses starting to recognize this. 2019, 180 global companies, including the chiefs of Walmart, JP Morgan Chase, pledged that their firm's purpose is no longer to serve the owners alone, but customers, staff, suppliers, and communities too. Basically talking about, a better form of governance, recognizing that there are more stakeholders in a company's purpose than just the shareholders and the owners of the company. World is starting to focus more and more on sustainable products and practices. And this really calls for human ingenuity. And I believe we are at a time when the call on human ingenuity is probably the highest than ever before. So again, I would see that there is an opportunity here to differentiate, making sure that we take the pillars of sustainability, recognizing that it is a journey forward, and applying R&D based innovation to create a differentiation. Now we all know, and one of the key drivers has been that China kind of grew very rapidly in the chemical industry, but it also took a very, very severe toll on the environment. And this has led to very stringent environmental regulations. Global players are, after the pandemic and even before the pandemic, have been rethinking about their supply chain strategies, which has been very, very tightly linked to supplies from China. And in the last 12 to 18 months, due to the pandemic and due to different kind of leadership styles, we have seen that protectionism has become a way. I mean, from a flat world, we are slowly turning into a world with walls. These are all factors that we need to consider when we think about a strategy and how to emerge stronger in the post-pandemic world. So summarizing all this, I think there is great opportunity for Indian players. We can even talk very specifically about the opportunities that lie in specific industries. In the agriculture and crop protection, India has always been kind of a leader. We have also been a leader in pharma. I think even in the domestic market, there are significant opportunities that are going to come from consumer durables, which are been growing about 8 to 9%, construction, which is growing at 8-10%, and with further investments that is likely to happen from the government side, I think this is going to see a significant increase even more. The auto industry, which probably 6 months ago was in a bit of a doom and gloom, is starting to come back strong. So I think both domestically and globally, the specialty product industry is going to come back very, very strong. However, I think there are going to be some very specific considerations on how we come out of this stronger. I think there are tailwinds. Over the last decade, Indian chemical players have developed competencies and true global firms have emerged. There is, as I said, huge untapped domestic market. And there is also a huge push from the government for indigenous manufacturing. So I think we need to do our piece in terms of, constantly looking for how do we differentiate, ensuring that when we recognizing chemical industry is an industry that is watched all the time by society and our stakeholders, respecting sustainability and safety, almost on a daily basis, because every time there is an accident, our industry gets a bad name. Regulators start thinking about greater regulations, which is not what we want. Really investing into innovation, leveraging some of the new developments in the digital areas, I believe we can really come out stronger. The other very important thing is I think the government is in a mood to listen, and it would be our collective responsibility to really think about how can government enable this growth industry to really further grow and create an environment we can really leverage the opportunities that are there. So with that, I again thank the organizers for this opportunity to not only share the a very eminent panel of business leaders to plan this conference, but also this opportunity to really share a few of my thoughts with all of you. I wish this conference a great success, and I hope that participants who have joined here really find this rewarding. And next time when we come back in person, we have a lot more support. And I look forward to actually being with all of you physically the next time we do this. So with that, thank you very much, and back to you, Mitra.
Thank you, Dr. Raman, for such an insightful talk. With this, on behalf of Chemtech, I would like to thank you for sharing your time with us. And with this, our inaugural session comes to a closure. I would like to invite all of you to join us for the next session, which is a panel discussion on unlocking opportunities for specialty chemicals for Atmanirbhar Bharat. We look forward to see you again at 3:30 after a short break. Thank you very much. Very good afternoon once again. So we are back now for the next session, which is a panel discussion on unlocking opportunities for specialty chemicals for Atmanirbhar Bharat. The anchor presenter and moderator for this session is Mr. Devendra Chawla. He's a partner with consulting practice and sector leader for chemicals and agri at Ernst & Young. He has over 3 decades of industry and consulting experience spread across various sectors. His areas of expertise include strategy, large-scale organization transformation, supply chain management, operational improvement, and cost reduction. He holds a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad and a Master of Engineering from University of Roorkee. Over to you, Mr. Chawla.
Thank you, Mitra. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's both an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the ChemTech conference and the discussions of this panel on unlocking opportunities for specialty chemicals, moving towards Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have a very eminent panel with us today. We have Mr. Sameer Somaiya, CMD of Godavari Biorefineries, Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni, Director Commercial of Garda Chemicals, Mr. Anand S., President Fine and Specialty Chemicals of Deepak Nitrite, and Dr. GVG Rao, who's the President at Atul Limited. I would like to kind of share a few initial thoughts to set the tone for the discussion today, and then invite each of the eminent speakers to share their thoughts on this topic. Just give me a second as I get my, can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, the Indian specialty chemicals market is expected to grow at a CAGR of almost about 12 to 15% over the next 5 years, mainly driven by the increased demand from the user segments, as well as the encouragement and push that the government is giving this sector. India's specialty chemical sector accounts for almost about 20% of the overall chemical industry, which is around $170 billion right now, targeted to grow to about $320 to $350 billion in the next 3 to 5 years. So the specialty chemical sector is likely to witness, as I said earlier, 12 to 15% CAGR growth, largely driven by end-use applications, along with the feedstock availability, which is right now stable, though we would need to kind of put in far more larger number of capacity or larger amount of capacity for feedstock availability as we grow. The overall cost effectiveness of the Indian specialty chemical sector is better than most countries, and that's another key driver for the sector, specialty chemical sector going forward. We've been witnessing certain strategic shifts in China. These include China wanting to move away from certain chemicals, and you know, as all of us are aware, China accounts for almost about 40% of the global trade in chemicals, and with that size a sector deciding to kind of reduce their participation in certain chemicals while increasing their focus on some of the emerging chemicals, whether it's around electronics or some of the emerging technology related chemicals, that will put up an opportunity for countries like India to increase their share in the global trade. India right now accounts for just about 3.5 to 4% of global trade in chemicals. Then I think the government initiatives and support being provided to the sector are going to be another key driver for our growth. Our competitive cost of manufacturing, availability of good quality talent, our increasing focus on research and development is another key driver that will drive our growth, and our movement towards towards premiumization of our products as we focus on more and more high-end products and specialty chemicals. Moving away from some of the bulk chemicals is another trend which is going to drive the growth for the Indian specialty chemicals. Some of the trends that we have been seeing in this sector globally is, and as well as in India, is there are capacity enhancements to match the growing demand, both from the domestic market as well as export opportunities. Moving towards supply chain de-risking, both happening at the global level. Again, some of the recent trends, especially during the pandemic time, a lot of countries have realized that their over-dependence on a single country is not a good strategy, and hence supply chain de-risking by some of the larger players globally is likely to, is a trend that we are seeing, and which is going to impact countries like India and the specialty chemical sectors here. Investment in research-led innovation is another trend that we are witnessing in the sector. Increasing digitization, whether it is operations, whether it is connect with customers, whether it's supply chain, etc., is something which we are witnessing a lot in any case, and this has been accelerated over the last 12 months because of the pandemic. Again, climate change has come under significant focus, both during the pandemic time as well as otherwise. And now with the regime change in the US, with US kind of showing their inclination to come back into the overall global discussions on climate change, we are witnessing a trend of increased focus on green products. So that's some of the backdrop that I thought let me start with as far as the specialty chemicals sector is concerned. But in order to harness this opportunity that is present in front of the specialty chemical sector in India, we would need support on availability and domestic manufacturing of key starting materials, active ingredients, and certain key intermediates. While we do have a shortage of feedstock and some of the intermediates already for specialty chemicals, this is likely to get more acute and accentuated as our sector grows and the demand for feedstock and ingredients increase. I've just put a small example of agrochemicals here. We do have a large dependence on imports for active ingredients in agrochemicals, for instance. Similarly, we have the same situation of high import of APIs, key starting materials. Even in a segment within specialty chemicals, which accounts for about $7 billion, we have about $2.4 billion of imports. So these are things which, again, need to be focused on. We need support from the industry as well as the other ecosystem players, including the government, so that we can address the need for feedstocks, key starting materials, as well as the intermediates. The growth in the Indian chemical industry would need to be built on scale and cost competitiveness as being the key pillars. This is something which a lot of the existing players are working towards, are focusing on, but this is something that will need to be a continued focus. While within specialty chemicals, you have chemicals where the global size of the industry could be as small as 150,000 tons, but there are other larger chemicals where we are yet to see, especially when we compare ourselves with some of the European and especially Chinese players, the scale that we see in manufacturing, we need to step that up. And that will bring both economies as well as the size of the plant growing will help in the overall cost competitiveness and even looking at how do we improve our export potential as well. So I think what's important is to keep in mind that as we go through this growth and have higher investments, we need to bring in larger world scale plants to bring in cost competitiveness as well. The other point that I wanted to emphasize on was that the industry needs to kind of look at competitiveness coming from R&D, getting closer to the global customers, doing co-development of products. So those are areas that need to be focused on as we go through our growth phase in the sector. Again, I must say that a large number of the sector players, especially the leading players in this sector, are already taking steps towards that, or are already working towards that. But as we see growth coming into the sector, I think the enablers that the Indian industry needs is or needs to focus on are R&D, co-development, looking at technology collaboration, focusing on new products and new processes, kind of being in step with the developments that are happening in the developed economies, and also look at how can we boost collaboration with some of the academic institutes, both in India as well as outside, to further support this enabler. And finally, the point that I wanted to emphasize on climate change and sustainability is kind of has already been in focus in the chemical sector over the last 10, 15, 20 years. I think the need to focus on sustainability is getting accentuated quite a bit because of some of the recent events as well, not just the pandemic, but some of the climate change aspects, etc. So I think the sector would need to focus on sustainable products, sustainable feedstocks and energy sources, sustainable processes and the business models. The key enablers here that the sector would need is, again, R&D, product development with a focus on sustainability, technology upgrade, government policies which would encourage that, as well as building the right level of infrastructure and ecosystem around that. So with that, I would like to kind of now pause here and probably start inviting the eminent speakers. So let's start by first inviting Nilesh Kulkarni. Nilesh, you have been kind of doing a lot of thinking, and your organization is doing a lot of work around Atmanirbharta, if I may say, and self-sufficiency of the sector. So I would like to kind of share your thoughts on some of these themes that we have for the specialty chemicals industry.
Yeah, thanks, Devendra. I think you've been very succinct and very interesting in your presentation in the beginning. So you have set the stage right for this discussion. When we talk about Atmanirbharta, I think India has always been very Atmanirbhar on its needs and requirements as and when it gets. Even today, if you look at it, we have a large amount of, take for example, our company, we've been kind of innovating for the last 50 years, and we have been building molecules which have probably never been done before in India. I think India is all set to become completely self-reliant and completely dependent on its own production. And I think if you look at the 4 or 5 things that are required for it, you look at the manufacturing capability. First, I think most important thing is scientific capability. Do we have the scientific capability? Absolutely, yes. We have the best of institutions that are there in the country, the best of manpower, the best of quality of people around, and the best thinking power available. Do we have then, look at going next to scale it into manufacturing platforms? Do we have that? Yes, we do. We also have that. We've had the best-in-class manufacturing units across the country. We're exposed globally. If you look at it now, when the de-risking strategy from the large players globally come, you're already seeing movement within the chemical sector in India. That only shows that there is capability to do that. I mean, if I have to break it further, do we have the capability for R&D? Yes, we do. I think India, over the last couple of years, many years, have also put in a lot of effort into research and development to develop their own processes and, to try and find alternate processes for existing molecules as well. Look at the generic space in the agrochemical space, for example. India has developed a lot of molecules with generic processes, with new processes, not the ones which have been which were initially kind of the processes of the inventor. We have created alternate processes which are greener, purer, and better in terms of manufacturing capabilities also. So I think that is definitely there. Once we have the R&D piece in, what is also important is how much are we in terms of government and even as industry promoting research and development locally. I think we're all the companies that we know in the specialty chemical sector are all working very, very focused on developing their own research and development programs. I think we're going much more towards inching one step in innovation every day. Now, where do we have the design capability to design the manufacturing plants? Absolutely. We have done fantastically well on that as well. Whether it's engineering or designing capabilities, we've done very well. Environmental capabilities, yes, we are changing, and I think very soon India will inch up to global standards because that pressure will also continue. And with the international players start coming to India now for the requirements, I think India is already pumping itself to become a good responsible environmental player in the game. Financial capability, there's enough financial capability available in India as well. So if you look at the larger piece, if you look at everything, for us, the key points that are required for us to become self-reliant are definitely there. And I think we're all inching towards that. If you look at China and look at India, I think like you just said a while ago, almost 43% of the global specialty chemical requirement is currently being sourced from China. And India is just about 3.5 to 4%. If you look at it, I think there's a large scope that is available. I think intermediates to start with, then of course the end products as well. I think we have good capabilities to do that. And I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic about how we are going to achieve this. Just to tell you, Bata Chemicals actually did the first ever agrochemical process, which was generic and kind of developed totally in-house, totally Atmanirbhar internal, was with the wheat herbicide isoprotron way back in the 70s. And ever since, there have been generation of individual processes, R&D processes, which are kind of totally, in the early days, of course, we did not patent them, but we continued to do that. And that culture continued for the company. If you look at us today, our import dependence is very, very low. And I think everybody in India has that capability to do that as well. We can reduce that dependence on foreign raw materials and intermediates, and we can become self-reliant. I'm absolutely hopeful on that.
Thanks, Nilesh. Thanks a lot for your thoughts. We'll come back to you with some of the points on what you mentioned. But let me kind of first go to the other speakers. Let me now invite Mr. Samir Somaya. So Samir, you as an organization and you as a person have been focused a lot on sustainable, not just products and processes, but even raw material. But as far as the overall aspect of growth opportunities for specialty chemicals is concerned, I would request you to share your thoughts on both these aspects of how do you see the sector growing and harnessing the opportunities, what is required to be done, and also share your own thoughts and experience on the sustainability side.
So thank you very much for this opportunity. A pleasure to be here. As you mentioned in your starting slides, India is importing a very large quantity of its energy needs, its chemical needs, and then within that, its specialty chemical needs. And India is a young country. It's also got a low per capita use of specialty chemicals. So if you couple with the fact that the country is growing and that it's a young country with a with a low per capita use, we see that the demand-supply gap is there as an opportunity for us as a country that we can become more Atmanirbhar. And then, again, we talked about sustainability. Our company, Godavari Biorefineries, uses agriculture feedstock sugarcane biomass to use as a feedstock for the chemistries. All around the world, we're seeing a climate of climate change. Consumer demand, supply chain demand, customer demand is wanting a more sustainably sourced product and a more smaller carbon footprint. Moving towards a circular economy, renewable feedstock, recycling, reuse. And customers are coming from various places. They may be international customers who reach out to you. They may be local customers whom we might work who want to develop a Indian supplier, as somebody on the same panel and we discussed just before starting. Or it could also be a local supplier who's looking at an international, a local customer who's looking at an international market. And if you look at the way the Europeans are now talking about their new Green Deal, there is great pressure on various companies globally, which may be located in India and overseas, to show that they are doing real, meaningful steps towards having better, greener, lower carbon footprint products. And you talked about research. Now, we can't just do this on our own. You have to work with customers because you're not often making drop-ins. Drop-ins are those which are exact substitutes for what was otherwise purchased in a fossil feedstock. You're making sometimes products which are from renewables, which may have the same, or if you have a very good research group, a better properties than what you are replacing. I know Garda Chemicals and some of the work they've done, they've created products with far better properties than that was otherwise there. And so in these projects, knowledge, co-working across companies, across organizations, and across geographies is extremely critical and crucial. I think, research and development teams have to be working with each other. Nilesh talked about the fact that whether we as India have knowledge, manpower, woman power, people power to actually develop new chemistries, new processes, new life science processes. And I think I agree with him. We absolutely have the capabilities to do it. What we need is to first accept failure. I think we need to celebrate good, meaningful attempts at trying to do something. And if we create a climate that celebrates failure, is the only possible way in which we will achieve real success. And I think that is what we need to do. The other issue, I think, is in specialty chemicals, scale is not such an issue because specialty chemicals by design are not something like a cracker, for example. They are smaller, and also if you're doing work in a skincare industry, if you're doing work in cosmetics, if you have a specialty agrochemical, you do not need to, the size of scale is possible over here. Once again, I agree with Nilesh that the ability to do pilot plants, research, to even design processes, and even to do basic engineering. And then there are enough companies in India which can also do detailed engineering. I think as a country, we really have the knowledge to take this forward. My experience in at least a little bit of the work we do in specialty chemicals, because Godavari buys sugarcane, but it makes products that go into mining. For example, we do work in mining industry where our products get sold across Africa, South America. We do work in fragrance chemistry. We sell to companies in Europe, USA, Japan. We do skincare work. So I think one thing that we need to do better is to get a better understanding of application. We might be very good at process development, chemical development, but I think one where knowledge really is supreme is also on how well that product works in applications. What is it? We have to move from selling chemicals to marketing solutions, to fulfilling a customer need. And I think that's where we need to transform ourselves to. Our starting materials, when we talk about feedstock, India has an abundance of sun and soil. And when water is used judicially, agriculture feedstock is extremely interesting because you don't run out of it. If you do it well, you can have the same this year as you did the last year. So I think, putting it all together, there's a great demand pull coming. Sustainable raw materials are only going to be there The market is growing. The specialty chemicals currently India is importing. We have the knowledge, people, power in the country. I think we have to become Atmanirbhar and have the confidence, celebrate a culture of trying until you succeed. So that's my take. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Samir. That's a very interesting angle. A couple of things that you mentioned, I would like to kind of come back, and maybe we can have that when we discuss the overall things with across the panel. But I think better understanding of applications and having solution orientation is something which is definitely very important as we think of how do we kind of leverage the knowledge and co-working that we are focusing on. Let's move to Anand now. So Anand, you have been you lead the fine and specialty chemicals for Deepak Nitrite, and Deepak has recently made investment in a large plant. So why don't you share your thoughts on how do you see the growth in specialty chemicals and CapExes that are required, and how do you see various opportunities shaping up for the Indian specialty chemicals?
Yeah, I just first I would like to thank for this forum here. It's a pleasure to be present in this today. Thanks a lot for inviting over and making our views here. So appreciate what's going on here. I think one of the key points that should be coming out is I liked what has been said by Nilesh and Samir so far. Two things I would like to pick up on in addition to what they've said is engineering is one of the areas where I think India came up pretty well and has been doing extremely well as far as chemical industry is concerned. There's a lot of sourcing that's happening for engineering technology from India across the globe. And if we look at the kind of infrastructure we end up putting in India, most of them are sourced internally. So at one point of time, we're looking at the value chain in terms of what we go in, but the CapExes are majorly driven internally. So this is one of the best things that we can have. The infrastructure is very well supporting that. I think in terms of technology that we deploy in those CapExes, that's exactly where the challenge is, which goes back to the R&D and the innovations that would come out of it. So there are two ways in which we need to look at it, and I would love if we can debate on that today is how do we make the products as one topic, and Samir nicely said, is about how we actually use the products, which is looking at how the consumers are ability to use our products. And this is where making things which are more relevant to each consumer across the world is where the differentiation is. So even though you make a specialty chemical, the way you make it would be the same, but the way consumers are consuming the product is exactly where the regional differences come in. And that's one area which is where we need to now start focusing on, because that's the value of the specialty chemical, which can bring back some knowledge or some information that modifies the way we make it. And this is one of the areas that I think we should invest a little bit in terms of R&D. And that's where two people are needed. One who looks at how is it being consumed, and the other one who looks at how that gets translated into a product feature. So this is one area where I would want to see that. The other thing which I would like to bring about is we are becoming attractive because of a variety of reasons that were shared and popularly known today as a destination for picking products. So we are becoming a place of choice. And this is where our abilities to translate those opportunities into action is fully driven by us as a group. The challenge today, I think most of the time we go is in terms of the logistical exports. I think the infrastructure in terms of one, Devendra, which you nicely pointed out, is the parks, development of parks. How well do we bring up industrial parks? How quickly we facilitate them so that they are housing and giving a protection to the growth that would be needed to cater to these emerging demands, either internally or externally. It was nice to see 9 large double-digit growths across all the products that you had on the board there. And these means that at least in 7 years' time, they're going to double. Yeah, 6 to 7 years' time, if you're looking at doubling all of them, the kind of parks that we would need to house the manufacturing to support them is going to be immense. On the other hand, if we couple that with the export requirement that would come in, which is actually a nice base to have industrial scale, this is one of the constraints that we were looking at. So the in-house consumption plus export scale is what gives us what we manage here in India. And here, I would say the infrastructure that we have in terms of export logistics is something that is going to come in because of a reliability in terms of keeping up our word. So how well do we keep up our promises to our customers is something that the world would be watching for, and that's something we should focus on too.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks a lot. Important aspects. I think you brought up a point, especially on infrastructure, as well as, how do we make sure that, we keep our promises with our customers and are seen as a dependable source of supply, especially from an exports perspective, or even for that matter, domestic market. And I will come back to that aspect. But let me kind of now invite, Dr. Rao. Dr. Rao, why don't you share your thoughts? I know you represent or lead a vertical within Atul, which probably is the most vibrant and was the most, I would say the first one to see success as far as exports and India's dominance is concerned. So I would like to hear your thoughts on how do you believe specialty chemicals beyond colors and dyes, some of the newer chemicals, how will India see success, and what is required in those areas? Dr. Rao, you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourselves, please.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I just put down some of my thoughts into the slides. Can I share my
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I hope you will be able to see them, all of you. Yeah, basically, I've tried to put in together all my ideas because I'm representing colorant industry as a whole, dyes and pigments and intermediates. The fastest growth we are expecting to come is from the intermediate industry. So about 36 billion, 36 to 40 keep varying, but considering that pigments, dyes and intermediates together more or less an equal share of this pie. And as you rightly mentioned, even in this industry, China is the dominant player, over 40% they have. But India is not at all backward in this colorant industry. We still have a 16% global, entire colorants as a group. But however, we have a tremendous potential to grow because we have a huge consumption as well as possibility to go into a different dyes and pigment areas. Why this industry is so important? Because the user industry is going much, much faster. And also the user industry's growth is significantly going to impact India's domestic consumption as well as for export. So although I put average CAGR is 2 to 3%, but textile industry is expected to be over 3%. Some of the plastics will go over 5%. It depends on the industry to industry. So this is going to go closer to 50 billion very soon. So we put down ideas into three major segments. One is the specialty intermediates, which is generally we consider as a part of specialty chemicals. One interesting area I wanted to share with all of you is that India is a huge consumer of anthraquinone and its derivatives, and already it is over 2,000 tons, expected to reach 5,000 tons, but we don't have a single manufacturer of anthraquinone. And second is 2-ethyl anthraquinone, which is very, very critical. We are now expanding capacity of hydrogen peroxide, and we are reaching almost close to 500,000 tons. But one single raw material, which is so critical for peroxide production, is 2-ethyl anthraquinone. No one is producing, and we are import dependent on this. And the price of this is varying within few months from $7 to $17. Again, drops down to 12. Huge gaps coming up in this. This influences the price of such a commodity product like peroxide. And 1-aminoanthraquinone, there's no producer in the country, which is a very, very important for both dyes and pigment industry. A large number of intermediates are based on this product. So this is one area we feel that country must focus upon. Apart from that, there is a huge amount of cyanuric chlorides and other acids are being imported. So we have already represented to the government, we have submitted on behalf of Dyestuff Manufacturing Association, a list of about 50 intermediates should be prioritized to be produced in the country. We will take up group by group with the discussions with government, but most of these are included in that list, close to 50 of them. Coming to the dyes, India has really achieved a global competitiveness, and today we have a much bigger share than even our biggest competitor in reactive dyes. But the same is not true for other dyes. Especially in the dispersed and other segments, we need to increase because our capacities are very, very small compared to what the sizes of plants available next door. And we don't have a single manufacturer of indigo in India, and we produce over 1 billion meters of denim fabric, and we consume over 12,000 tons of indigo and also over 12,000 tons of sulfur. Sulfur, we have in-house strong potential of producing in India. We are producing much more than our requirement. But however, indigo is not a single manufacturer is available. This is one area of interest to the industry. Coming to the pigments, we see that we are slowly gaining a good market and reputation, as well as an excellent application areas developed by our industrial colleagues. This is helping us. However, we are still lacking in the diketene derivatives and carbazole intermediates. And we also need a large amount of beta-naphthalene derivatives we are importing. We don't have backward integration of these, which industry is largely dependent on. The pricing is very volatile of these segments. Lastly, I would like to summarize saying that we have to minimize our dependence on these N-1 imports. There are quite a few of them can be definitely managed now. And we also have to look at the possibility of non-conventional way of producing methanol, especially the Canadian company, Ecrima, has put up a plant from producing methanol from waste. And we look at the technologies for producing continuous products. And we should also look at the possibility of strengthening our connection between the industry and academia, where the sustainable solutions and bio-based chemicals can be produced and work together and develop for the future. This is in short from my thought process, and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you very much. So there are a few very interesting points that came up as you know, each one of you were sharing your thoughts, and I think I would like to kind of at least pick a few of them and see if there are some additional thoughts that the other panelists would like to share around that. One of the thoughts which kind of has been brought up is around scale, and also linked to that is the fact that our feedstock situation. While Samir did mention that we have plenty of biomass and sun and a constant source of biomass, but the fact is today most of the feedstocks, we always will be a gas or oil starved country. We're not likely to be self-sufficient in that space. And what that means is that our dependence on imports on whatever stage we get the feedstocks in would continue to be high. Okay, so some thoughts around how quickly can the transition towards the biomass-based feedstocks can happen, because I don't think it's something which can happen overnight. This is something which will take a lot of time, and especially to scale up to meet the overall requirements. What that means is that if I'm short of 4 naphtha crackers today, I would continue to face shortage for some time to come. Okay, yes, we need to focus on moving towards biomass-based feedstock, but so that's one point. Related to that is again taking the examples from China, where global players have made very, very significant and deep investments. We are talking of complexes which are very large, which have an impact and opportunity generation for downstream specialty chemicals as well, with assurance of intermediates and feedstock. So I think these two things are very connected to my mind, and I would like to hear some of the panelists talk about this. Maybe Nilesh, you can share your thoughts on that, and then we move to Anand as well, please.
Um, I think from a feedstock standpoint, from biomass, I think I'd rather hear from Samir because he has he's directly into it and he would be in a position to give us a better picture about that currently. But I think from a feedstock standpoint, we are still about gaining the base that is required. But of course, like Samir said earlier as well, the issue about sustainability and the environmental concerns will continue to come in the way as we keep talking about that. Even if we get in naphtha crackers in, there are other ways also. People are doing a lot of work on coal, trying to extract BTX from it and trying to, solve this issue. So I think from a research and development standpoint, we're doing quite a bit in trying to solve that problem in India as well. But I'm quite interested in this hearing from Samir as to how he sees this from the biomass standpoint. How does biomass-based feedstock show up? Does it show up in the near future? What is his sense? Because we've also been trying to work on this very regularly, trying to see how we can, kind of utilize a combination of the two.
So Samir, maybe you can come in here before we go to Anand on that. But
No, yeah.
Key point is how quickly can we switch and what will be the scale?
No, I think firstly, this is a journey. We're not going to be able to snap a finger and create the feedstock or the product we need. We are very clear that there is a big import, even as we speak today, for specialty chemicals. That imports are going to keep growing unless we build our own capacity to rise to that. So that's one.
True.
To respond on the biomass point of view, I think similarly, as we build capacity to do products, we should also keep thinking of building capacity to have biomass. Just to give you an example, when you talked about gas, that we will be a long-term gas-based economy. If you know, the government of India recently has created a Satat program for the creation of biogas, bio-CNG, primarily to meet the energy requirements. But there is if you look at it, they think that you can easily, but they have set a target of meeting 40% of India's bio-CNG requirement or biogas requirement of that is 25 million tons by 2025. Now, whether that is possible or not in terms of timing, the feedstock is clearly there to generate the biomass in a distributed fashion. So biogas, that is bio-CNG. So my point being, we have to look at capacity building and capacity creation at all ends of the spectrum, from a feedstock point of view, from a research and development point of view, process chemistry point of view, final product and applications. None of them will happen together. They will move at different speeds, but we have to keep working at it. And I don't think we've eliminated, the idea is you got to move to become greener. It's very difficult. It is one thing to say greener and it's another thing to say only green. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we've looked at a fossil economy for a long time in the absence of a green economy. We should seriously think that it is really possible to create a green, lower carbon footprint to supplement the economy we are in. And we'll see how kind of disruptive that will be as we go forward. But I think that the possibility is much greater than any of us imagine today.
Yeah, I appreciate your point that I think it's important to see that, these two streams will have to coexist for a significant amount of time, at least definitely in the foreseeable future.
If I may, just for a sec, if you look at shale gas, now I'm not saying shale is fossil, but nobody thought shale was going to be a possibility in the US 20 years ago. And today has completely disrupted the energy matrix of the world and certainly made USA a gas exporter. So I think, I'm just saying that there are possibilities. We just have to go after them. And I think we have tremendous quantities of biomass in this country. Finding it, collecting it, transforming it, I think it's possible. Imagination has to be there and a will to do it.
Let me bring in Anand right now. And Anand, if you can also, talk about feedstocks and what could be the speed of conversion to some of the newer things?
I would talk more in terms of what I've experienced in life pretty closely in terms of this particular topic, and it's been kind of close to the heart. So let's talk about a few things like biomass. One of the biggest things is as a country, we don't convert enough of agricultural anchorage into a product. So our productivity in agriculture is pretty low. Now, given that much is a space that you can that is areable or available for agriculture, and we are food starved, this becomes one of the primary issues that always will confront us when we're looking at using the land for industrialization versus using the land for giving food. Yeah, and this has been a controversial topic quite along. If you see across the world, we are as humans, we have been trying to grapple and live this fact. How do we balance this as a country is one of the biggest challenge. Let me give you two examples to what I'm saying. If you're looking at replacing fossil sources in chemicals, let's step back and look at fossil being used, being replaced by biomass in petroleum itself. I'm coming to biodiesel. Okay. If you look at what happened in terms of the biodiesel usage that happened for the palm oil industry, and this we know which went the other way, and the amount of palm oil that got grown and the anchorage that got in, the productivity that came in was the sole supporter for this conversion. Okay, and there you see that petroleum usage was fueled with doping that would go in, that's allowed. So that the mixture was allowed in 1%, 2%, 4%, 5%, and now they're talking about 10%. So we will always be competing in terms of what is non-fuel sources, but the primary reason where the land would be used is for food. So I think there's a bigger question there. Would we give away the land to feed the people and make food more expensive? I think this will be a question that will be coming up. But the primary driver for that should be increasing our agricultural yields. And this is where you see in terms of per capita usage, we are still not there in terms of agricultural produce. So that's going to be the basic reason where people will shift to what. And this will be controlled in the end. So even though we would say that shifting to fuels, shifting to biomass can be a solution, I don't see that could be a solution in the immediate term. But having a vision in terms of where we would go is extremely essential when we step on this topic. That would be my opinion in that. Having said that, we've seen a couple of few users, like how Samir has been saying, they don't use products which are today currently got alternative use. They're actually using products which have been used for its purpose, and what is left out is getting converted into materials. Now, that's a real good opportunity where we should capitalize on. And this will open vistas, because then you take what you want from the biomass, and what is left out is what you convert. And there are enough chemistries which are being worked around on this. We've even seen acrylics, for example, being propagated coming from such waste or byproduct use. So if that comes in, then the whole polymer industry is changing its face in terms of changing from a demand of propylene, for example, that would be needed.
Yeah, thanks, Anand. Yeah, I think some of the things, especially on whether they are biomass based or biodegradable, etc., there is a significant shift that we are seeing both in packaging and certain other industries as well. There's another area which I wanted to kind of bring up, and it did get mentioned, which was more around the strengths on engineering, strengths on R&D, strengths on basic scientific thinking. But we are more oriented towards process-related R&D and work as compared, because we don't have too many products to our credit. Okay, there aren't any patents or that many patents, and so I think somewhere we need to also really see how do we kind of bring more collaboration and bring some world-class R&D happening out of India, because we have the basic talent and the know-how and the ability. So I think that's one thing which I wanted to kind of definitely flag. The other thing is, probably as a sector having a better and more organized strategic thinking. How do we pick our battles? There are people talked about, and Dr. Rao just mentioned that, when you look at the value chain, you find while you have a lot of the ingredients there, but some key ingredients not being manufactured in India at all. So is there a need to kind of organize ourselves as an overall ecosystem and as a sector better, along with the collaboration with the government, and say, pick our battles, look at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and say, this is a subsegment or a subsector that I would, as a country, as an industry, excel in, and I would be known for this, and I will be the leader in this, and then go hammer and tongs doing that very well, building the infrastructure, building the supply chain, the supply base, and the know-how and the R&D, etc., etc. So that's the point. I would want reactions from all the panelists, and we can quickly go around, because I think, to my mind, saying that we need to do a lot is one thing, but let's pick our battles and go really good at it. I mean, I would want each one of you to give your thoughts on that, please. Nilesh, would you want to go first?
So Devender, to your point about product versus process development in India, I think you're right, because if you look at the product inventions and the cost of product inventions or innovations, the cost there is prohibitively high. And I think until we as a system, which includes the government, the private industries, and also the government-run industries and the academia come together to try and resolve this, to try to reduce that particular cost for product development, we will be in a better position. Until that, it becomes extremely prohibitive. Take, for example, I think pharmaceuticals, we have done pretty well. I think there's a lot of focus there, but take our area, which is agrochemicals for that matter. I think very little gets done in India in terms of product development. But of course, now that scenario is changing. People are trying to develop their own products. If you look at the agrochemical molecules in the last couple of years, you see a lot of focus from China. You see a lot of focus from Japan. You see a lot of focus from the big boys, which is the Bayer, BASF kind of companies. So you see that focus. But unfortunately, Indian companies, we are still not focused towards developing these products. But we're more focused towards making these better processes, more efficient processes, greener processes, and trying to reduce or improve the product quality for that matter. I think the cost is the biggest prohibitive factor in this product development side, which needs to be addressed. And I think looking at the focus that all of us are now putting in for R&D and to develop products, I think we are not too far away from getting some. We can always see some in the biologicals area. A lot of product development is happening. So there is focus. We can't say that there is none, but I think not too much activity is there in that area. I think the biggest constraint would still be the cost factor there.
Okay, Samir, your thoughts?
I think yours is a very interesting question. How do we choose which battles we want to, which do you pick? I think it's a mindset change to be able to graduate from process improvements or even making processes to getting into specialities. Specialities by design are also performance. So I think we have to very much get into performance. And when you get into performance, there is a huge knowledge skill set that, let's say, the larger companies in the world that have been there, done that, that they have inherited. And so we have to build our own, shall I say, own encyclopedia of knowledge to do that. The way we are looking at it as a company is we are looking at where we are strong in feedstock, as in biomass, and taking it, and where we are good in process. So where we have a good scale, and then we're working with customers for their specialty needs. So we're not trying to do that in isolation of our customers. It's not a battle that we are picking. It's partners that we are picking, where we think that the the triple benefit of having good size feedstock, which is also working on low carbon, good process chemistry, and then where customer, you're meeting and fulfilling a customer needs. So fundamentally, not picking a battle, but picking partners.
Thanks, Amit. Very useful points. And I think we're running out of time, maybe another 4 or 5 minutes. So very quickly, let's get Dr. Rao and Anand in, and then we'll probably summarize our thoughts.
Devendraji, basically, I tend to agree with what Nilesh said. Is predominantly our products are pretty well established in terms of their application areas and their performance. So we mainly focusing on process improvements, efficiency improvements, and minimizing the impurity levels. That's what the today's, rather than going and developing the brand new products which are altogether new molecules. Yes, certain extent that is also happening, but major activity predominantly is focusing on efficiency improvement and cost reduction areas. And that's what I feel, because we use a huge amount of solvent processes, converting from solvent process to fusion process, and ensuring that elimination of acid in the process and things like that would take our industry much ahead of what we feel.
Yeah. Anand, your thoughts, please.
I think in terms of where we choose to win today, it's a very broad canvas that's available for us. There's enough pockets where we can excel and gain on. I actually like this idea where you take a particular thing and try to get a whole expertise built around it and known. I think for quite a few areas of agrochemicals, and we know that India is very well known as the primary source for those molecules. Yeah, India is also very well known to harness all the required competencies that are required in terms of delivering it, and we are also known to be the organophosphates of the world. So, let's take organophosphates. Historically, we were pretty strong in that. How do we build across that, and how do we move around it? Is one of the key areas, and I think it's not difficult to take that in. But that we are a pretty small player today. How do we go from that scale as an internal consumer to a global scale where that recognition comes in? Is exactly the challenge which the organizations needs to overcome. I can be pretty proud of this organization, Deepak, that we've taken a few of such chemicals and really built it to global scale. And if you look at organizations in India that have done these particular things, there are many, and you can pick across India where they are building it. But in the whole scheme of things, we tend to minimize that and overlook it. Probably that's a new way to look at Devendra, and I appreciate what you said there. And then you would see nuggets of what they are sitting on, and those nuggets, how do we grow around them, is exactly the way to go.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks a lot. So I think we probably close to the hour. Let me kind of just first of all thank all of the eminent panel members for their thoughts. But I would like to kind of just say that in the end, I think we all agree that there is a very significant headroom for growth as far as the specialty chemical sector in India is concerned. Feedstocks will be a challenge. There is a possibility of coexistence with biomass-based things. I think there's a need to have a lot better collaboration between academia, industry, the government, and even the customers global. I think we need to focus on developing our infrastructure and making it more robust. And I think we'll need probably to have a deeper discussion around how government's policies can probably help us, channelize our energies better and focus on a few battles, as I said, and come out leaders in those areas. So with that, I would like to thank all the panelists again, and over to you, Mitra.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mitra, you're on mute.
Sorry. There are 2 questions if you would like to take that in last 2 minutes.
Okay, sorry. I mean, these probably came towards the end. I did check a couple of minutes back. So there is a question around how do we see Industry 4.0, artificial intelligence, and all the emerging technologies impacting this industry? And a question specifically focused for Samir, where they're saying, how do we see things happening, especially around the biomass based R&D working and so and so forth. I will let Mitra, if we have time, let me kind of pose the first question to maybe Dr. Rao and Anand, and Samir, obviously, then to you for the question specifically around how do we address the R&D around sustainability and biomass based feedstock. Industry 4.0, Anand, your thoughts?
I think it's Industry 4.0 is something which is pretty interesting, and a lot needs to be done in India in terms of coming out on this. If you're looking at scale and we're operating it efficiently, I'm a big supporter of safety at all times. This is one of the areas where you can look at predictive failure areas and act very early. I think one of the things that we as chemical industry leaders need to look at is how do we make this chemical arena a safe place, and the community at large can trust us. Here, I don't mean in terms of customers, I mean in terms of general population, okay? Not giving them a fear that, oh, there's a chemical plant next to my house or next to my town. How do we not give that fear? I think that's exactly where we would come to. And with scale, we also increase the risk. And that's exactly where I think it's one of the must areas of investments.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Industry 4.0 is something where all emerging technologies, which could be put under the umbrella of Industry 4.0, is something which the industry needs to leverage, not just to make themselves more, safe and adherence to various SHE requirements, but also to improve efficiency, improve customer proximity, improve supply chain performance. And I think it's something which the industry globally is leveraging, and the Indian industry is focusing on that, and probably we will see more and more of that. Samir, we are running out of time, so I would request you to kind of react to the other question, which is more around how can people work with organizations like yourselves and see how the whole thing about biomass based feedstocks and R&D around sustainability, sustainable products can be used.
I'll give a very quick response. I think it's happening. So when you say it's not happening to Dr. Bilson Shukla, it is happening. We see customers, as I said, from India, within our own country, and from overseas. We're talking to a company in Holland right now to meet one of their needs for a specialty chemical, but which is derived from a low carbon source. We're working with our own farmers to see how learning from them how you can go to low carbon farming. So I think it's very much happening. We have to you have to navigate a line between keeping what is confidential to you, and at the same time having borders which are porous so that 1 + 1 = 11. I think it's very much happening as we speak, and without it we cannot go too far. Sitting in your own system. So that's my response.
Thank you, Samir, and thanks a lot, everybody. I think we've run out of time, but it's been a very, very enriching discussion, and thank you all once again.
Thank you for the opportunity to Chemtech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists from Chemtech. We have put up a poll also for the session, and we are getting good response on that. People are getting active. Once again, I thank all of you for having joined us for the discussion. And now we go to our next speaker for the day, Mr. Pavitran M. Kalada, Managing Director, Indian Subcontinent, BDP UGL Global Logistics India Private Limited. Mr. Kalada has overall 28 years of experience in global supply chain and logistics. He held various positions in corporate sector before moving to set up his own startup in 2008 with investment from HNIs and friends in the name of Unique Global Logistics. UGL later entered JV with BDP International to expand the operations in India. 2015, BDP acquired 100% ownership of UGL and merged the business to rechristian the name of company as BDP UGL. Mr. Kalada continues to lead BDP's Indian subcontinent operations as the Managing Director and part of the global leadership team of $2.6 billion BDP International. His career span includes managing large integrated supply chain process international shipping, freight transportation and EXIM operations, project logistics and trade compliance. He holds a university degree and a postgraduate diploma in foreign trade. Mr. Kallara is an active member of international trade community and industry associations such as CII, ICC, AMTOI, etc., and has been a speaker to many conferences and seminars related to supply chain and international logistics. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Kallara. Over to you now. You'll have to unmute yourself. Mr. Kallara, you'll have to unmute yourself, please. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks, Mitra, for a brief introduction. It's nicely, I think that you built a lot of expectation in the presentations to begin, I believe. Anyway, so good evening to everyone, and thanks Chemtech for inviting me and giving an opportunity to present this very hot topic at this point of time in the industry, which is happening post-pandemic. So I'm sure this is audible. I would like to share a few slides to everyone at this point of time. Are you all able to? Okay. So let me share a few slides, which is for everyone to look at. The key agenda which I would like to cover for today's session is that the brief timeline of 2020 for the ocean carrier industry, because of the topic is more of the volatility in the ocean carriers and the supply chain disruptions at present going on. So what are the few observations and the metrics which related to ocean transportations and into the current market situations? And headlines in the marketplace, what's exactly a few of those things which will be sharing to the shippers and the importers in the forum, and the market headlines and the market reality. And then finally, what should shippers and the importers do now in this current volatile market situation? So that's basically I would like to cover. I hope you would see this picture, which is actually giving an outlook of the ships with loaded containers standing queuing in outside the terminal for waiting for the berth, so which is leading to a port congestion. So look at the beautiful family and the beachside shore is seeing in the ships which is going up, and that's where the beginning. This is an early April pictures which is taken from the North Sea, and which is basically when the entire country world is gone to a lockdown during the pandemic time. So in the process, what I probably would like to look at a brief timeline of the ocean carrier industry, what exactly evolved, and giving a huge 22 years of outlook on a world container index by Drewry. So look at the graphic, which we basically give an outlook from $1,800 containers, 40 feet containers. I hope the teams in the group is familiar with the containers and its dimensions. So 40 feet containers, 1,800, which is now scaling up as we stand in the month of January, which is coming more than $5,200. So it's a huge spike in the container freight, index in the last 24 months timeline. So this is where it has begun. It's begun by end of 2019, where we thought of, when we as shippers and importers and the logistics service providers thought the concern were more of IMO 2020. We definitely thought of the freight definitely go up because of the carriers has to adopt to the new IMO regulations. But then Q1 opened up with the Chinese New Year supply contractions, then coming into this widespread of COVID-19 virus across the world that's actually flatters complete trade across. And then that's lead to an extension of blank sailing effort due to COVID-19. When we talk about this terminology called blank sailing, is basically the vessels not calling and it's just keeping on that particular voyage. Then it is coming into the Q2 of 2020. What we look at, then air market contracts, XXPP, no other cargo is going because of the flights across the world has withdrawn and no capacity available. The air borders and the country borders were closed. So the all air freight which is expected to move is come to a standstill. Countries have gone to lockdown and demands at shrinks because the markets is not open up. So the demand shrinks. That again putting in when the demands are not there, the price of oil is plunges and the loaded containers remain at the ports. Why I'm explaining this? Because that's where the problem begins. And that will correlate to the complexities which we are into today in terms of this ocean shipping volatility, what we are in today. And the carriers, when it comes to the later part of the Q2, we see carriers continue to the blank sailing because they can't have enough cargo in the port to load, and they don't have, ports are getting more time to offload. So they continue to do the blank sailing during the Q2 end. And the prices of oil remain low and ocean equipment market disrupt. So that is disturbed because the containers, which are, as you all know, that when the Chinese New Year, because from Asia, the many of the containers are shipped across the world, and that's where it is rotated across the world for ocean equipment. So ocean equipment's market got disturbed. Equipment's completely imbalanced. The containers were not gone from the March to later part of the June. The major containers which go out of Asia to North Europe or North America has got stuck, and the containers which is already arrived at those locations is not getting offloaded, not getting back. So that's equipment imbalance is actually spiked. And then at end of the Q2, China slowly begins recovering it. So China started looking into the global market, few containers are start shipping out. Then we went into the Q3, which fleet grows lowest rates. We did not see because additional volume, additional fleet, additional capacity is not built because of the Chinese New Year slowdown and then during the lockdown. So the new deliveries, new order, which is not coming in. Blank sailing as normalized come to a stop. So normally it should come in. The blank sailing is normalized. That comes to a little bit of a stoppage. But that is the time when the spot rates started it started climbing up. So as we close the Q4, so when we look at that export from China surge, and that actually the rate, ocean freight rate from the Trans-Pacific to North America, and global equipment imbalance, which is basically spiked, it's gone into, and the US import spike, lack of truck capacities. What is exactly that is impacting? The US markets open up, but then the question comes when that's open up, the loaded containers sitting in the port is not being able to evacuate as early as possible, so that containers could go to the warehouses or the importing factories and then get it turned back with the loaded containers get it back to Asia. So that's actually not happening. That's becoming too very low. And then simultaneously at the same time, the Europe is getting into Brexit challenge because of the border clearances, containers moving across the Europe, got slight kind of a confusions how the Brexit evolved, what can be the border clearances. So that's actually been further added into that. And then definitely all the special equipments like reefers and the ISOs, that also become a scarcity in the marketplace. And then carrier come and as a discipline by carriers drive higher rates. They continue to do a blank sailing. They still have not utilizing their fleet capacity, and then they are not being able to bring back and to bring the container back. So, but they discipline their sailing process. And when they become more disciplined, they have been able to drive higher rates in the marketplace. And now, as we see from the Q4 end and early 2021, as we embarked into 21, the oil bunker prices begin to rise. Where we are standing, 2019, we thought of the freight rate will go up slightly because of the IMO, and 2021, as we open up, we still feel that in the highest peakest in the last 5 years or 10 years timeline, the highest freight rate in the ocean carrier market. So what initially started as a shortage of capacity and containers has turned into delays and congestion problems across the entire international transport chain. That's actually been the market volatility, which is basically existing. Let me give you a capacity bottleneck. So some of these data are which are basically source of query is the percentage of shipments rolled over in November is 37%. What does that mean? Is 37% of the shipments which is not exactly connecting to the ships which intend to. So that's been rolling over to maybe a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks timeline. Incidence of late ship arrival has increased to 37%. So that has become a big challenge. There is no predictability for the ship's arrivals. When it comes to ship load factors compared to November 20 and 19 to 20, that's increased 11% because that's the capacity came back in the later part of the Q4 of 2020. But however, container to load ratio has plunged to 25%. What does that mean? A container rotations, how much time it can be used to rotate, that's where the carriers can utilize these containers, has reduced 25%. So why? Because these containers, once loaded, reaching to destinations, waiting for more time, and getting it to offload and bringing back, taking more time for the carriers. So that's actually added up the fuel, the price escalations of the current market price. And furthermore, the container ships are avoiding not only on Los Angeles. It is, if you look at because Indian shippers and importers are a lot depend upon the major transshipment ports like Colombo, Singapore, Portland, which are basically moved into a congestion. Vessels are taking berth, delayed berthing, and then skipping some of these ports, which are basically missing the connection containers, and that is completely going your import shipments delayed, as well as export shipments are not connecting on time as you committed to the customer. So these are the complexities which basically the bottlenecks in today's what we are existing. So these slides, which I wanted to basically highlight, is the current market situation. So COVID-19 recovery is an imperative to keep a watchful eye on, and so I think it's all the 2021, the first pandemic, is all going into how are we going to manage the pandemic in the next few months. That's where whether this price escalation today will continue to be exist, or there is a stability which is going to come in the market. The near-term expectations are increase on fuel cost and demand continue to surge. What does that mean for you can expect a bunker charges imposed by the carrier in the new time because the prices are going up. And we have seen nearly $200 per ton increase on the cost. When I'm talking about, it has basically become huge impact for the containers. So container supply and demand percentage. As of October 2020, global demand on a port traffic has gone up to 6.6%. But then you see the right corner, the capacity is only increased by 2.7%. So the demand has gone up by 6.6%, but the fleet added and the capacity is increased on the global capacity is only 2.7%. So there is a big imbalance of capacity, demand and supply perspective. And as regard to the 40-feet containers freight average, going from $1,583 to a $5,229, which is a multiplications of 5 times. So that's basically impacting to all the product, apart from the reliability and the speed and delay in supply chains process. So how that is an impact on supply chain? Cases are almost fully recovered, as this has become a normal operating environment now, because the ports are congested. They have already whatever the dry capacity available in the market has been already chartered and put in operations. And the direct result has been an improved financial output for the carriers. But however, few things which is basically coming in, a few of the government, particularly federal maritime agencies in US and China, has closely looking at and engaging carriers and expressing their concern on this, bringing in a transparency in terms of the pricing mechanism. So global economy has contrasted in 2020, but that recovery is now coming back. So what we expect a growth of 5.8% in the merchandise in 2021. If that happens, there could this volatility continue to exist throughout the 2021, because you have a capacity added only 2.7%, but we expect to have a growth of 5.8% in the international trading. When that happens, there is always a demand and supply challenge. So we, as a ship, as freight forwarders and the logistics service providers, we expect that post Chinese New Year, there could be some relief on this pricing, bring in some kind of reliability, but we do not see that happening. So and the significant challenges with the space and the rates remain on the trans-Pacific eastbound. When I talk about trans-Pacific eastbound, is from the Asia to the North America, and similarly Far East westbound. So those prices continue to be going up. That's what it is looking at, and that's where it is standing. And what is further impacting, even if you have the high level of price on ocean freight payment, but on-time delivery has plunked 34.3%. So this is even the lowest in the many years time. The global 6-month average is 47%. So even after you paying the high price, you are not at guarantee that your container will be on board of the ships and will arrive exactly on the time what you have what is being expected to be. That's the current market situation. I thought of it will be helpful to apprise from on the basis of some of the data from the trade. And fuel, some of the few other things which is adding to this shortage of inventories. And you can see the two of the large incidents in the recent past, which is happening, the containers which are floating in the waters and the ships encountering into a rough weather. So that's actually taking on the one Apos incident, which is taking 1,800 containers into the waters, and the recent the Maersk Essen incident, which is taking 750. So what does it mean? That you already have another few thousand containers which is not in use, and that's actually adding up already deficit market. So that's actually further fueling into the complexities of the problem which we are facing today. So if I need to sum it up or expect this few things for 2021, what is the post-pandemic scenario which will drive? Carriers on-time performance continue to be challenging. So I think that's what shippers and importers can expect. So I think that's continued to be challenging. You will not find the ships exactly coming on the day it is being expected, because the port congestions and the uncertainty and the performance of the of the ships, which is still being lower. So that's basically continued to go on. Rate continue to be a volatile in the market. So you will not be in a position to see that an immediate recession in the pricing of ocean transportations, because that's basically look at the supply and demand mismatch which continue to be accessed. As you see, Indian export has been growing. Similarly, we are seeing China now back from the Chinese New Year, so the capacity will go up, and the shipping demand which goes in China is gone higher. So this container and supply and demand mismatch is continue to exist until Q3, Q4 of this year as well. And the port congestions is remain there, in particularly, though we are not seeing much congestion in Indian ports, but the nearby ports which are basically dependent for us for our transshipment, which are still being into a challenge. That's Colombo, Singapore, Port Klang, and also you have seen in US, because that's the largest where the containers, loaded container go, and this container has to come back to load from Asia back. But as we look at in the first picture where I began, you see the containers queuing up in Los Angeles, Long Beach in US, and those ships are large ships, which is from anything from 12,000 containers to 16,000 to 18,000 containers per ship. Those ships are basically standing and not being able to get berth. And even if it is berth, the truck issue which is happening in US will take more time to ferry those containers to the importer's facility and then get it again reused, bring back to Asia. So I believe the horizon is not nearby for us to get a relief in terms of those things. And blank sailing carriers continue to be, because of if they don't have enough containers, they are not able to utilize the full capacity of the ship. They're probably forced to take blank sailings. And transshipments, as many of you, if you are on the call, shippers as well as the importers, you would see continuously saying that shipments are skipping in the transshipment port. Singapore containers are sitting more days to connect on a vessel to India. I think that's continued to exist for this 2021. So we don't see an immediate relation there as well. Vessel delays is going to equipment imbalance, and definitely carrier is going to definitely make a little bit more money, and they're becoming strong financial background. But yes, I think I put Teddy Roosevelt's nice quote: complaining about a problem without proposing a solution is called whining, right? So I thought of being from an industry, worked in more than 20 years. A little bit of my knowledge, which I was sort of sharing, what could we do all together what can shipper and importers can do in this given circumstance. A few of this next slides will I just quickly touch base. And what should we do? Focus on becoming a shipper of choice. What does that mean is that the carriers, reach to the carriers to becoming a shipper of choice means you might end up paying premium because you wanted to have a consistent supply, so you become a shipper of choice to the carrier. Hyper focus on carrier commitments and allocation for the top FCL lines. What probably you need to look at that, which are the top line, top customer base which you have, and wherein you talk to the carriers to give us an example. Like if you have in North America for a 10 containers to move in a week, you probably start saying, yes, I would like probably a 4 containers allocation, which you give me a commitment so that we can continue to feed, plan our supply chain, plan our commitment to our customers. I think that's kind of a dialogue to become in, not rather said, okay, good, I have 10 containers, I can give you 20 containers, so why don't you give me a price and space? Their carrier is not interested. Probably at this point of time, the discussion is shifting. Okay, I have 10 containers, but give me a assurance that 4 containers you will give me a commitment. So I think the dialogue, the table has turned. I think that's where the discussion should probably start taking shape and determine how to manage volume growth versus allocation. So that's again, I'm coming back, how we can determine the volume growth versus allocations. And then probably some of them are, bartering a long-term agreement for additional capacity, saying that, oh, good, I will continue to lock in onto this price for probably next 6 or 7 months. So can you give certain percentage of additional allocations, so and additional capacity allocations? And apart from that, whoever is dealing directly with the carriers probably can think about, NVOCC partner. That means the freight forwarders for an overflow and short haul. So that enabled for you to get some additional capacity allocated for your exports as well as for imports. And then some of the innovative thinking should say that, okay, good, I have 10 containers coming to my factory. Can I take 5 containers for my export from the same lot? So turn program to transfer an import container to an export container. That way you can probably leverage some of the cost benefit as well. So some of those things, which is what I would probably encourage the community as well as the shippers and importers to start thinking about, particularly from the chemicals perspective, because you people carry a lot of volume. So improve forecasting and commitments. I think that is very important to see that long-term forecasting just in time has not actually gone. I think it's now, the thing is that 4 to 6 weeks of forecasting for you to give it to your logistics service provider so that they can get some allocation from the carriers. Develop directly or via third party improved cargo in transit visibility capabilities. So what does that mean today in supply chain is the biggest challenge is happening. You don't have any visibility when the containers are arriving. I think we, as BDP, have seen now some of the customers are reaching out to us to have. So we have a global relationship with the strategic partners who are giving a container visibility from an end-to-end perspective, so that at least you can have near-term predictable and visibility for your feedstock as well as your finished product shipping to your customers, and so get a bit more predictable answer to your production line and your end customer. And probably many of us probably start looking at targeted SAP lead times from 15 days to 30 days to 50 days, going into 2 months and 3 months. So I think you might have to adjust your lead time in an SAP or any ERP system so that you have a better forecasting process and the manufacturing product. Engage internal and external customers to manage expectations. I think I have many of the logistics my colleagues are always saying that it is a pressure situation. So, but I think setting up, internal, engaging your manufacturing, your sales teams, and your supply chain team to get expectations set on the right way, and considering advanced inventory to decide growth areas. So you probably have to look at one way of looking at is, can I keep some material as an inventory in North America? Because if you're an exporter, you are supplying to North American market, the earlier timeline has to be changed. So can you look at advancing some inventory into key growth market from a perspective of not just being just in time? And some of the more shifts to keep your commitment with your customer, because this time is important to keep your end customer commitment and keeping the feedstock and supply. For India, we are looking at getting engaged into the international market. So some of them are the air freight, but yes, air freight is not anymore cheap at this point of time because a lot of passenger capacities has already taken out. Belly cargo capacity is not available. Then moving into sea air, we are also seeing some of the customer opting out, shipping it on a short term from here to Middle East or nearby Singapore, and then connecting on an air freight to those. So I think that's something which we can and also looking at alternative sourcing market and shipping from a gateway port. So this is one of the important point, like, because shortage of containers in the interland depots are much larger from the gateway ports. So maybe you probably have to start trucking it down to the gateway ports and stuffing the containers, or maybe taking the container and railing it out back to gateway port like Nhava Sheva, Hazira, or Chennai. So this will probably have bit of an advantage than shipping it from ICD if it is for the crucial shipment perspectives are concerned. So that is some of my viewpoint. And I think with that, I think, Mitra, I'm on time. Maybe if there are a few questions from the audience, I'm very happy to take it up.
Yes, sir, you're very much on time. So as of now, we don't have any questions, but in case we receive, we'll email those to you, and then we can share those responses with the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Mitra and Chemtech for giving us an opportunity. And I will close down with a bit of briefing on BDP. We are basically a US-based global supply chain and logistics company specialized in chemical supply chain and 2.6 billion company. In India, we have 13 offices. We handle ocean, air, inland, and ISO tanks and the container shipping. And so we have in-house custom brokerage, transportations, and global logistics end-to-end capability in India. So this is a bit of BDP for the audience to understand a bit of our background.
So thank you, Mr. Kalra, for such an insightful talk. I'm sure in these times of pandemic, people would definitely have benefited a lot from whatever you have shared in terms of supply chain management. So thank you once again for accepting our invitation and joining us today.
Thank you, Mitra. Thanks to all. Thank you for all for listening from me. Thank you very much.
So if you could stop sharing your screen, we can go to the next speaker. Thank you. Thank you, sir. So next speaker for the day, last speaker for the day is Mr. Sunil Patil. He is the Director, Solution Consulting, APJ, Aspen Technology. Sunil has more than 20 years of experience enabling digital transformation across asset and operations lifecycle in process industry. He has hands-on experience in delivering process simulation, dynamic modeling, planning and improving profit margins and consulting, refining and chemicals industry digitalization. His experience in cross-section of industry verticals, namely manufacturing across energy, upstream, refining, oil and gas, chemicals and polymers, metals and mining, and energy and utilities, etc. He holds a master's degree in chemical engineering. Currently, he is responsible for the solution consulting and market development of AspenTech products and solutions for Asia Pacific Japan region, and leading the AspenTech solution consulting team for Asia Pacific Japan. His specialties include digital transformation and sustainability, AI and ML, IIoT solution consulting, business consulting, process modeling and simulation, process engineering, pre-sales, business development, sales and marketing, and key account management. Welcome, Sunil, and over to you.
Thank you, Mitra. Thank you. I'm audible. Can you just confirm once?
Yes.
And my you can able to see visible, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Chemtech, for this wonderful opportunity to share our vision for digitization and what's happening around it from AspenTech. As you can see, my topic is more focused towards specialty chemicals. Okay, so what are the key forces, right, which really actually drives the operational excellence today, right? We have been hearing a lot about Industry 4.0, digitization, digital twin, and so on, right? But the key forces, right, which actually what we can say market forces, which really drives your operational excellence are volatility, workforce, sustainability, which you heard a lot about that, as well as the technology or the solutions available today in the industry, right? And you can see some huge dollar values there, right, which really drives the numbers there, right? So when you say volatility, right, it's really influenced by supply and demand imbalance, right? Energy transitions, right? For example, some factors like macro factors such as tremendous volatility in oil price fluctuation or regional demand variations and so on. So this has a significant impact on operational excellence today, right? Sustainability, right? I think this is all about climate, energy, environment, as well as the social responsibility. We talk a lot about the circular economy, plastic recycling. So it's all about the sustainability, right? So adding new demand, new requirement, and reducing the emission, that actually drives your sustainability. And as you can see, that investment coming in circular economy is almost like 1.5 billion in that range, right? Then about workforce, right? It's about the people, the skill sets, availability, the challenges what we have to train the people and attract the new generation technical workforce today, right? And obviously in this current dynamics, current situation, remote workforce is added another dimension to that workforce challenges, right? And finally about the technology, right? I mean, we talk about the data. We do have a lot of data, but then again, the question is what I'm going to do about that data, how I'm going to make use of that data. So certainly just data is not enough, right? We need a domain expertise. We need people to understand that. We need the new solutions or new technologies built in within that. For example, AI, which I talk about that little later, right? So these are the factors, right, which really actually demand the new levels of operational excellence, right? You will hear some of those in my presentation little later. Okay, let's look at this value chain diagram, right? So if you look at from left to right, right? So from a broader perspective, right? This is what happens in the industry, right? So when you move from left, which is from upstream, where you get an oil all the way up to the consumer products or what you call CPG, right? What happens is complexity increases from left to right, right? And it drives, of course, the higher value, right? So this is what we call feedstock integration, and companies talk a lot about that, right? For example, you hear a lot about O2C, which is what we call oil to chemicals, right? And that really drives because of the market demand, because fuel demands are going down or people are looking alternate fuel like green fuel, for example, hydrogen and so on, right? But when it really comes to high value goods or high value specialty chemicals or consumer products, your complexity increases, right? And that is what companies are really focusing today about. How do I really increase the margin when I really optimize the entire value chain from upstream all the way up to the consumer goods, right? And you will hear some case studies or some examples from me later in this presentation about this opportunities available today through this digital technology, what AspenTech offers to our customers to really enhance and optimize the opportunities to maximize the margin. Right? Okay, this looks a little bit complex diagram, but this is what we call the digital solutions available today for across the chemical value chain, right? I won't go all of the details, but some of the things which you can see here, for example, I mentioned about the supply chain, right? So people talking about supply chain integration, a lot of innovations coming into the digital technologies. For example, AI ML coming into the process simulation or process optimization, process analytics. You heard a lot about that. Of course, one of the key drivers in this digitization is predictive and prescriptive maintenance, where companies are looking at the early event detection sort of solutions, right? And of course, the other technology like energy management, operator training, simulators, digital twins in the what we call real-time environment, executive management, and so on. But at the same time, what is important from an Aspen point of view, which we're really working towards what we call as a self-optimizing plant, right? And that is something which is the next industry innovation, what we call an industrial AI innovation for the process industry, right? So let's talk about digital twins, right? I mean, the reason I want to spend some time on this explaining, because the digital twin, I mean, there are a lot of definitions one can really talk about that, right? So what really is about the digital twin, right? So digital twin, one can say, okay, it may be a replica of real plant. It could be a process plant simulated into the process simulation platform. It could be a soft sensor kind of things, whatever, right? So you call it is whatever. But when you talk about the digital twin, right, it is very important in today's world, right? Specifically in today's environment, in the context of broader discussion, right, about that digitization or digital technologies, right? It is very important to understand what does really digital twin mean, right? So one can say, okay, today it is very important for companies to enable the remote work, right? Because it's very difficult for in the current situation people to really visit the plant, right? So how do we enable the remote work? How do I monitor, or how do I optimize my equipment performance, right? By sitting at maybe at a remote location or even from a work or environment, how my technologies help me to optimize my plant, sitting at the house or sitting at a remote place and looking at the data available today. Asset monitoring, health, or how do I track my health of my asset, right? Then planning or energy consumption, energy optimization, soft sensors, right? Measuring and reporting the sustainability performance, and a few of the things I talked about, like emission, right? Because those are the key things one really wants to track and so on, right? So it is a broader thing, right? It's not about a process model. It's not about representing a plant, but looking holistically about the entire plant. Sort of, I am operating it in a remotely, right? So that's how people talk about the digital twin, right? So I'll share a picture here, probably something some of you might have seen, that those who are familiar with Aspen technology. So as you look at this picture, right? So there are three parts of that. What you see in a green color, what we call plant digital twin. You see in a blue color, what we call as operational digital twin. And you see a purple color, what we call as is a process equipment digital twin or operational integrity digital twin. Right. So there are three parts of that. What it really means is AspenTech really offering a complete digital twin for an asset, not for a process unit, not just for an equipment, right? But we are looking holistically for an entire asset, right? So our view of how company could look at the concept of digital twin, and this will see considerably a broader and more encompassing picture from this diagram, what is projected here, right? So again, just to go back, that blue portion, what we call as operational digital twin, it is mainly about optimizing the operations, right? In the facility, operating assets, as well as planning, scheduling, controlling, execution, distribution, demand management. So all this become part of the operational digital twin, right? When you look at the purple circle, right, it is about the predictive and prescriptive digital twins of the plant, right, where people are looking about the reliability of the equipment or early event detection, right? So those are the things which really we look into, that the operational integrated digital twin. And finally, this green one, this is an important part, right? This is what we call plant digital twin, right? And here, actually, it's important to know the health of the equipment or performance of the equipment, the design of the equipment, when we do sort of revamping of a process plant, right? How do I optimize my asset from a both cost perspective as well as from a resource perspective, looking at a CapEx, OpEx point of view and so on, right? And at the same time, of course, the important here is to optimize the plant in a real-time environment, both from an operations point of view as well as consumption point of view. So for example, if we talk about the energy, right, people always say, okay, my energy is very important, so I should be able to save energy both at operations, that is at my receiver's end, as well as from my supplier's end. So that's all what we talk about, a complete asset digital twin platform, right? And AspenTech probably is the only company who offers this in complete integrated asset optimization for the process industry. Okay, just moving forward, I will share some of the examples, right? In the previous slide, we talked about the process digital twin, right? And as you can see from this screen, right, one of the example here is the plant digital twin, right? You can see a picture from process simulation, which is, let's say, for example, Aspen Plus process model, wherein we actually simulate the real plant, right? Real plant using the real plant data. One can get the data from data historian on DCS or SCADA from the plant and connect that data historian to the simulation model and optimize parameters from the process model. One can actually publish in the dashboard. So here you can see another picture here where I see what is my current plant performance, what is optimized values, and how much is the gap and what action I need to be taken here. I should take it here, right? So this is what we call as actionable insights, right? So this really gives an actionable insights to the operators, process engineers, operation people in the plant based on the real-time data as well as based on the first principle models, right? This is a classic example of what we call an operational digital twin model. Okay. This is another example, since I'm talking more about the chemicals today. In chemicals, there are a variety of operations, right? It could be a batch process, it could be a semi-batch or a continuous, as well as there are a lot of solid unit operations like drying, crystallization, so on. So it's a complexity, right? As you heard earlier, I mentioned about when you move from upstream to the chemicals, the complexity increases, right? The process complexity goes up, the reactions, the kinetics, right? The solid handling processes, it becomes more complex, right? But how do you handle that? How do you simulate that? Do you have an accurate properties available? Do you have a data availability, right? Because the convergence, the kinetics, the reaction, it's not the straightforward when we move to the fine chemicals, specialty chemicals, or even pharma ingredients, right? So this actually is handled in one environment in Aspen platforms, right? What we call an integrated process platform where you handle the batch processes, continuous, as well as semi-batch and solid unit operations in one environment, right? Which really helps to quick and easily simulate batch as well as continuous process in one environment. Convergence become faster, and of course you reduce the dependency on the experimental iterations and so on, right? A lot of examples, I'll share some of them in a while. For example, companies have achieved a significant batch cycle reductions. Companies has improved the yield. Companies have reduced the energy. Quality has been improved, right? So those are the key things what one can achieve really with this kind of solutions, right? This is a broader picture. As you can see, I was talking about the batch and continuous process in one environment, and one can see the properties, right? You can have a 3D diagram or 3D diagram to really track about the properties. Like for example, some applications, right? I want to really study a transition process from batch to continuous, right? How do I do that? Or evaluate the product purifications or solvent recoveries with the different types of solvents or different types of solutions I want to try and test, right? One cannot really do all such experiments in the plant, but this is an environment where one can actually test, try, evaluate it, optimize it, and come up with a solution where actually then I can implement in the plant, right? So this platform helps process engineers or chemical engineers to really optimize the different types of chemical processes, right? And again, as I said earlier, obviously companies have been doing this offline, but now since we're talking more of a digitization and digital twin, this has really become an online now. What it really means that it is a real-time optimizer where it connects the process model, connects to the MES solutions like a data historian where the models fetch the data from the plant and they run at a defined frequencies to produce the actionable insights for the process engineers or operators. Okay, let's look at some examples, right? And these are the few examples which we choose from chemicals and polymers industry, right? For example, if you look at the example from Daicel, it's a Japanese company. They have been using our integrated digital twin technology where they have successfully reduced the experiments by 70%, right? For a new polymer grade development, right? Similarly, Hanwha Chemicals from Korea, they increased the production of LDPE by 5 to 7%, and that translated to significant benefits to them, right? Dow Chemical, they have actually, from a safety point of view, they did a site-wide safety studies using this technology, AspenTech digital technology, which actually helped them to evaluate mixing hazards to avoid the accidents and so on, right? Then Mitsui Chemical Japan, they could able to reduce the energy by 1.5%, which is significant, right? 1.5% energy reduction and so on, right? So there are a lot of examples, right? I mean, we can share this with you, and these are sort of what we call as the published case studies or success stories available for us to refer. I mean, how these companies have achieved the significant benefits using this digital technologies, right? And the examples are there from bulk chemicals, polymers, specialty chemicals, right? And large petrochemical plants and so on. Okay, now let's move to the next topic. As I said at the beginning, my topic is not just about the digitization. The topic is about the innovations in the digitization, right, for the specialty and chemical industries, right? So let's talk about the innovations, right? So as you can see in the top, right, what we call or AspenTech now call is industrial AI in action, right? So this is something new. This is like what we have innovated, and this is the only unique. This is AspenTech is the only company who has positioned this industry, what we call as industrial AI, into the process simulation. So to elaborate more what it really means, I mean, people are familiar with first principle based models, right? Which is the models based on the equipment and the models based on the first principle thermodynamics, right? And at the same time, we talk a lot about the data today, right? It's about the data science, the data, machine learning, algorithms, and so on. But each of these models, whether it's a first principle or the data, they have their own challenges. For example, in first principle model, it's hard to capture all the phenomena or properties. You certainly need a little bit of expertise there, and also it requires a bit of time to develop the model. At the same time, for the machine learning or data model, obviously you need the help of a data scientist, and the most challenging part is the interpretation of the data and so on. So AspenTech, what we have done is we have uniquely positioned this to combine first principle model together with the data model, what we really call it as an hybrid model. So we leverage the domain expertise what we have, combined together with the first principle and AI/ML models, and that combination is what we call as a hybrid model. So these two combined together, we have actually innovated a new modeling methodology, what we call the hybrid model. And you will see some use cases which I'll share in a minute, right? So this is a very unique development innovated by AspenTech. It's already available for our customers to use, and companies are really actually developing a lot of use cases to solve the industry problems using hybrid models. The problems which we could not solve using first principle models, as well as it could not be solved even just with a data model, are certainly addressed with the hybrid models, right? And it is first of its kind AI-based modeling technology available today for the chemical industries. Okay. So hybrid models, right? I talked about that. So it's about the combining your first principle model and bringing your domain expertise and the data into the one environment, right? So it's basically what's about is combining your data and model, including the ability to complex behavior that many cases couldn't be modeled, right? For example, some phenomena or some properties like color or morphology, typically those are very hard to capture into the first principle model, right? But the hybrid model, together with this data model, certainly would help to address those kind of challenges, right? And again, as I said earlier, it is about combining your AI, artificial intelligence, and the data with the first principle model. That what we really bring together to solve this industry challenges of the complex models or the models which are hard to simulate, right? Very specific geometries or that ones which are very proprietary, right? And those could be addressed using this kind of a combination. Okay. Yeah, and I said already, right? The problems that cannot be easily modeled can be addressed or can be modeled here, right? So model which are difficult and complex processes, those are we can simulate here, right? Users, the process engineers can model processes and assets that cannot easily be modeled with first principle alone, right? You get the accuracy of empirical models, the strength of first principle models, leveraging the power of AI with the different algorithms built in here. And of course, as you know, AspenTech has more than 40 years of domain expertise in this area, right? So combining all this together, this is what we call the new innovation, what we have really done into the process simulation or process modeling area, helping our customers, right, to solve any kind of a complex processes, be it a very complex equipment or large asset or whatever you call, helping our companies to achieve increased yield by 1 to 5%, then increase throughput as well as reduce the energy demand. Okay, so that's how companies are really trying to achieve it. Yeah. Now, if you have to look at the sustainability, right, it is also important the model has to be sustainable, right? Because the young generation, the new generation, they are really the technology savvy people, but it is also important that they should have the skills to sustain and maintain the models, right? So AspenTech is ensuring that when the models are developed, it's not just developed and it's implemented or it's used in the plant. We also maintain that it is easy to maintain, easy to calibrate, or faster to calibrate at a defined frequency and so on, right? So it is very important for us, right, that we actually develop the model, but at the same time, it is easy to maintain and sustain by auto calibration or by making sure that it is easy to calibrate for the engineers. Okay. Okay, this is another example. As you can see, this is again the example of a hybrid model, right? For example, you see in the diagram, there are different process equipments which are actually simulated using your first principle model. For example, you see the distillation column, pumps, heat exchangers, and so on. But at the same time, we have a model which is actually built into the hybrid environment, what we call a database model, right? So we can actually build into the AI model builder and bring that into the process simulation environment, right? And this combined model, what we call, is a combination of first principle and data model, is actually simulated into the process simulation environment, what we call as a hybrid model, right? So as you can see, you can have reactors, you can have membrane kind of units, or all kinds of complex process equipments which are simulated into the one environment, right? Okay, so let's talk about the example, right? Do we have a real example where this hybrid models? Yeah, of course, we do have a lot of examples. Of course, from a confidential perspective, we may not be able to share the company name, but this is an example from a large petrochemical company in Asia, right? So this is a polymer plant where they have actually deployed this hybrid modeling technology, the first principle combined with the data model, right? Of course, the goal were to reduce the transition time, reduce the waste of polymer grades, and at the same time, reactor model, which they have the LDP, or they have the reactor model, which does not calculate the key properties, right? So the solution is, of course, the standard LDP model, which was developed in Aspen Polymers. They actually use this AI-driven model into the same environment. And the benefits, as you can see on the left-hand side, the value created is significant, right? So the 50% grade transition time reduction, which is significant. The savings, almost like $723,000 US per year savings, which is again a significant savings for such a plant. And they also achieved the waste reduction target, basically what they have, the sustainability goals, right? So this is very important, right? So this is one example, but again, if you are interested, please feel to reach us, and we'll be happy to share the use cases or examples relevant to your industry, right? So we can talk, or we can find out what could be the use case where this data-driven and first principle models can be used. Okay. Then next, finally, about the plant digital twin, right? Now here, this is again a classic thing, right, about the plant digital twin, where for example, the column, right? So this is a typical example in any process industry is about the plant digital twin, right? So when a distillation column, right, when we have to do the hydraulic visualization of a column, right? So typically, as you know, in the columns, which are really the key things about the efficiency and some of the hydraulic things in the column, for example, the things like the column flooding or column weeping, or the trays and the packing geometry and things like that, right? So it's very difficult to understand, right? Typically, when you have to do the debottlenecking or turnaround studies and so on, right? But using this AspenTech plant digital twin technologies, one can really quickly do the operation decision support, improve the margins, reduce emissions, and so on. How it's possible? Because we do have a column hydraulics capability where one can actually see the what's happening inside the column, right? I mean, it's not that I just judge what's inside. It's just not just what what's happening inside the column by looking at the pressure, temperature, flow profile, but one can actually see that in a dashboard, like what's happening in each tray. What is my hydraulic situation? What is my pressure drop? Is there any physical constraint in the column, and so on, right? And that really helps to address any constraints or any challenges for column operations in the plant, right? So this is again a classic thing, and again, when we talk about the plant digital twin for a distillation column, we do handle all sorts of geometry or trays or packings inside the column to really see the very accurate hydraulic hydraulic details of the column. Yeah, so what are the key benefits, right? I talk a lot about digital twin. I mean, there are two things I talked about. One, digital twin, which are based on first principle based, which is anyway, companies are using it now, and the digital twins, which are available now, what we call the next generation digital twin, which is based on the hybrid modeling, which is bringing data model together with the first principle model, right? I gave an example of a polymer plant, like a grade transition reduction or the cycle time reduction or reduce the off-spec and so on, right? But to summarize, what are the typical benefits? Of course, in chemical plant point of view or spec chem pharma point of view, companies are really trying to optimize the reactor batch time, reduction in cycle time of a process, reduce the impurities and so on, right? And of course, something like golden batch cycle time, golden batch selection, right? This is something known word in the polymer industries, if you are familiar with, right? So how do I recognize the golden batch, right? And comparing the runs over the several months, several batches, determine the what are the most optimum operating conditions in the plant, right? The other thing is the soft sensor. This is very important because I cannot really measure all process parameters at all places in the plant. And even if I really depend on the lab analysis, it's a time consuming, it is delayed lab results. And of course, instrument faulty, the errors in the instrument are the again secondary challenges, right? So soft sensors are very important. That's another additional advantage of this process digital twin. And finally is about continuously improving the performance of the plant, right? You can use the dashboard. Those can be customized at a various level, like a dashboard for a management, dashboard for the process engineers, dashboard for the operators, which really gives the insights for the process engineers or operators to take the actions immediately, right? So one really don't have to wait until the problem occurs. You can really take a corrective action even before the problem occurs. So that is the important thing for the spec chem digital twin. Okay? So finally, I would conclude my presentation about AspenTech's vision for sustainability, right? And I talked about that a little bit earlier. So sustainability, right? There are really three drivers for that. Specifically, when you talk about chemical industry, right? So sustainability are the three drivers. One is the resource efficiencies, is about utilizing your resource such as energy, water, feedstock, as well as the fuels and so on at a most optimized way, right? Second, and which is most important, which has been talked a lot today, is about energy transition and the decarbonization. You hear a lot about biofuels, alternate energy, green fuel, hydrogen, also about the net zero energy and so on, right? And third is circular economy, right? Here I talked earlier as well. It's about recycling. It's about reducing the plastic waste, right? What are the innovative ways to really minimize the plastic waste or recirculate it, right? And there's a huge market available today, right? And it's like investments going on this in this what we call R&D for circular economy is in the range of 1.5 billion and so on, right? So these are the three key drivers about the sustainability today, right? So if I have to really further look at it, right, of course, the end goal is to reduce emission and the waste. and by achieving this resource efficiencies, the bringing the technologies for circular economy, be it a plastic recycle or renewable feedstock or whatever the way you call it is, and then finally is about energy transition or energy reduction and so on, right? And to track this progress, of course, what we have today, one is really looking into the carbon intensity, harmful emissions like SOx, NOx, safety, renewables, and so on. And what companies are looking, I won't go details, but you'll be hearing a lot of press releases from the companies about their vision for net zero emissions, design out pollution and waste, as well as eliminating the complete toxic substance from their process plants and so on, right? And what is our mission, right? You heard a lot about digital twins, technologies. You heard about the sustainability and so on. But the AspenTech vision is to help our customers in process industry, be it the chemical, energy, upstream, midstream, right, to accelerate the digital transformation, which is anyways part of the today's life of any process industry. So our vision or our mission is to help to accelerate this digital transformation by optimizing their assets, to running it safer, greener, longer, as well as faster, right? So that's our mission for process industries, and we are already there. I talk a lot about new innovations, and you heard some examples, case studies, and we'll be working closely with the process industries to achieving our mission and helping companies to achieve their goals and their vision in the today's environment and today's sustainability world. Okay? So that's all from me, and I'll be happy to take any questions if are there. And thank you once again, ChemWorld, to giving this opportunity to present on the new innovations for digital technologies for chemicals and specialty chemicals. Yeah?
Thank you, Sunil. There is a question from the audience. To how much extent does digital twin is similar to the actual working plant, and how do we recognize it?
It's a good question, and I appreciate this question. So, if I were to really elaborate, right? In other words, in one of the slides, I said the digital twin is really a replica of a plant, right? So you are creating an image of plant in a platform, in an environment where you can actually run the plant, right? Is like a real plant, right? So what happens in the plant, we really may not able to do a lot of trial runs, or we may not able to play with the plant to do a lot of testing, or maybe like new feedstocks or new catalyst and things like that. But we can really do that into this virtual plant, right? So this digital twin is actually, in a layman's language, is a virtual plant where we can actually replicate the real plant in a virtual environment, right? And that's what I was referring to. But at the same time, this virtual plant is actually connected to the real plant as well, meaning previously people used to do that, what we call what if scenario studies, that is offline. Now, since it's a real time connected to the real plant data historian, so whatever is happening in the plant will also happen simultaneously in the virtual plant, so that you can see the immediate effect in the virtual plant, take the corrective action or do the trials, and then the model will predict what could be the way, or what could be the actionable insights for the operators to take the corrective action. Yeah. Any other
question? All right. Thank you, Sunil. That was the only question that I had seen in the chat box. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. You can now stop sharing your screen.
Sure.
So thank you very much once again to all the speakers for the day and to the lovely audience. And we look forward to meet you all again tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. for a session on safety, sustainability. So thank you once again, Sunil. And
thank you.
With this session, with this talk, we bring this session to a closure today. Thank you and have a very good evening.